Greetings! This is Griff Ruby with yet another Isaac Asimov short story review. This may be more than a review. This one appears in the June 1957 issue of Satellite Science Fiction. Now, what's kind of interesting, I was just noticing here, it has The Man Who Plowed the Sea by Arthur C. Clarke. And it has one of these kind of spacecraft that look kind of reminiscent of some of the drawings of spacecraft that appear on the cover of a number of other books, either by Arthur C. Clarke or collections of his stories that were published back in the 60s and 70s, where a lot of these spaceships also seem to feature a lot of round balls, and a lot of them look kind of like the spacecraft from 2001, the movie. And I noticed there's kind of that reminiscent look right here on the cover. But that's another story for another day. What I'm going to focus on in this case, however, is not credited on the cover at all. But it's still in the table of contents, and it is listed here as A Woman's Heart by Isaac Asimov. Page 120. No, 123. Page 123. No. Yeah. Page 123. And the next story, by the way, is page 125. So in other words, this whole story, including, as it turns out, a blurb and some artwork, is on two sides of one piece of paper. Well, let's talk about this A Woman's Heart a little bit. And something else happens here that I'm going to do. Okay, let's just start with what we have here in this release of the story. We have here the title, A Woman's Heart by Isaac Asimov, a short blurb, and a picture of the woman. And this, by the way, is Flora Miller, very well drawn young lady. I guess that's the idea. And her three suitors, one of whom is Thomas. And the next one here is Richard. And the last one here is Henry. So let's see, Henry, right? Not Harry. No, here's Henry. So it's almost Tom, Dick, and Harry. Okay. Or was that Mo, Larry, and Curly? Or Jim, or Joe? You never keep track of how many 5 or 6 Stooges there are, the 3 Stooges. But, these are the 3 guys that want this girl. Well, lots more, but she's narrowed it down to these 3 very obviously different persons. And what each one is offering, in fact, is kind of shown with him. So near Thomas, we see piles of money, coins, bills, whatever. Near Richard, look at that kind of thin mustache. What kind of face is that? We see wine, we see bracelets and jewelry, and that's supposed to be romance. Now, near Henry, we see, I'm not sure what that square thing is. What's down in the bottom could be maybe a washer and a dryer, or a stove and an oven, or various things. And then there's a car there. Now, this is June of 1957, and note the fins on the car. That's what cars looked like in 1957. That's not futuristic, it's just what cars looked like in 1957. Okay, so I'm going to do, okay, and the blurb here reads the following. Flora was a modern, scientific girl. Her demands would have driven Diana's suitors mad. I assume that's the Diana from Greek mythology. Or, whatever, the Ephesian Diana, some legendary mythical Diana. Not, we're not talking Princess Diana. They're not that good at prophets. Okay. So, now, I'm going to do something here. If this is wrong, if I get a copyright strike, I end up having to reload a different version of this video in which I don't do what I'm about to do. that happens. But I'm going to make the assumption that I am not convinced that this story is still copywritten. I think it has probably lapsed. See, when Isaac Asimov gathers his stories into various books, collections, or whatever, be it normal collections of books, or sometimes he'll put a story in some other volume of his, like The Weapon goes in his Enjoy Still Felt book, or there's another one about the Dreamer which goes into Opus 100, but most of his stories go into collections of stories, robot stories, mystery stories, stories that just kind of go well with Nightfall or The Winds of Change or The Bicentennial Man or The Martian Way or all these different kinds of stories. The ones that go in Earth is Room Enough or Nine Tomorrows. All these various collections that he's come out with along the way to gather up various stories. By doing that, by just copyrighting those books, that protects each of the stories in the book, since also the stories are listed specifically as stories and their history and where they came from. So by renewing the copyright on the books, the Asimov estate retains claim on all these stories. Now, I wouldn't do this for the Portable Star, one, because it's very long, and two, because he has a particular distaste for it, and attempts to put it out there by anybody but the original publisher, who also retained the rights, tend to get quashed. Although I saw a report that one fairly recent one was actually grudgingly permitted by the Asimov estate. I don't know. But previously, before, it was like, when I showed that one, I showed the original Thrilling Wonder story. There it is. He wrote it. He wanted it there. He got it there. And then he said, oh my God, what have I done? But the publisher, he didn't allow it to go anywhere else. He hated the story. He didn't want it. But the publisher also had the rights to it. And in the other collection that I did show and tell there, it got reprinted there. And there was nothing Asimov or his estate could do about it because, they also had the rights to the story. That still doesn't mean that I have the rights to it. So I can't read that one. You have to find that where you can, or find places where it's been legitimately reprinted to read the story in full, if you really want to see it. Now, in this case, it doesn't appear to have been so much opposed as just falling through the cracks. I mean, he probably was going through looking at his old stories, and he probably looked at this and said, this is forgettable. So he just decided to forget it. It never got gathered anywhere. As far as is known, this story has never shown up anywhere except this one issue of this one rather minor science fiction magazine. So the only way for there to be a copyright would be if it has been specifically as a standalone story renewed. Maybe he did this. I'm gambling that neither he nor the estate did not do this. And once it is lost, it is lost. It goes into the public domain. You can't recapture it. If I am mistaken, well, if you see a newer version of this video that doesn't feature the story, this will be why, and I'll have to say that again. So I'm going to do something I don't normally do. I'm going to read a story. Flora Miller was perfectly beautiful. She knew that she was, but she explained to the three adoring young men that she was far from completely happy about it. It is not only demons who grant wishes, she said. Aphrodite, properly approached, will, and often has. Aphrodite indeed, said Thomas ardently. Okay. Richard nodded in agreement, and Henry sighed. I asked for a husband who would make me truly happy, and she gave me perfect beauty. But, alas, the results are insufficiently selective. All men are attracted to me, but not all men can make me truly happy. So Aphrodite granted a further boon. Any man who wishes to marry me may request one gift to make me happy. Page. Among the many aspirants to my hand, I have selected you three as the most pleasing to me. Tell me each your plan to make me happy, and I shall make my final choice. Do you agree?" "We agree," chorused the three young men. "You will have 30 seconds to consider," said Flora. Thomas said, "I need no time to consider, but will speak at once." Thomas was a trifle plump, but he had a determined chin. "What a woman must have is economic security," he went on quickly. "Marry me, Flora, and I will ask Aphrodite for unfailing success in business. I shall ask for the golden touch which shall convert all of my enterprises into stacks of cash. We shall always have more money than we can spend, and you shall be secure, therefore completely deliriously happy." Said Flora thoughtfully. Richard broke in and said, "Nonsense, Flora. Thomas will be working constantly to increase his wealth, and you will be wretchedly lonely, therefore most unhappy." Richard was dark of complexion, with lively brown eyes and white teeth. "Marry me, and you shall have what every woman needs most, romance. I will ask Aphrodite to grant me the gift of eternal ardor. I shall dance divinely, knowing the brightest places and the gayest people, and I shall love you always. You will be perfectly loved, therefore happy." "My," said Flora pensively. Henry said at once, "Not at all, my dear. Joy incessant palls, and love unchanged will cloy. You will be perfectly bored, therefore supremely unhappy." Henry's face was angular, and he had a high, thoughtful forehead. "Consider, instead, that you are a modern woman," he went on. "As an American wife of today, you will be primarily an engineer. You will have a machine to wash your dishes, another to wash your clothes, another to dry them, another with which to iron them. Think of what that will mean. A machine to heat the house, and one to cool it. A machine to heat your food, and one to cool it. A machine to mix your batter, one to warm you at night, one to carry you from place to place, one to tan you, one to entertain you, and one to take you to the moon or Mars some day. All these machines will be under your control, and on all of them your own and your family's comfort and happiness will depend. Marry me, Flora, and the gift I shall ask is this, that all your machines remain always and forever in perfect repair." And Flora threw her arms around Henry's neck with a most delightfully abandoned gesture and said, "I am yours." That's it. Well, obviously, this pictures a woman going on to be a classic 1950s style housewife, for whom all these wonderful machines were definitely major boons in their way, and labor-saving devices. They gave her the ability to have more free time, to also have accomplished more with less effort. So, is that really what would please somebody? I mean, looking at the picture of the romance guy, I don't trust him. But what he promises seems like a good thing. I've always figured a person should want, I always promised a lifetime of love and laughter. I try to make good on that, and sometimes I succeed, and sometimes I don't. But that's life, And we keep going, and it has worked. So I can see him looking at some later collection of some of his stories. I can see why that wouldn't be, say, in it obviously wouldn't be in the rest of the robots, or Earth is, it's too late to go into Earth is Room Enough anyway, and it's definitely not worthy of Nine Tomorrows. It's not worthy of A Nightfall and Other Stories. It could have gone into a By Jupiter, but by that point, now let's see here. By the time we're getting to By Jupiter, he's probably looking at this. The whole women's lib, movement has come along. You've come a long way, baby, they said in all those cigarette commercials. And, somehow not every woman aspired to grow up to be somebody who a homemaker, a housewife, whatever you want to call it, a housefrau, and so on. Not every woman aspires. Many want to be, have other more interesting and worthwhile careers out there that pay and so forth, and some even might be content to have the man do tend the house and be the house husband, if you will. We could do this. This is just, roles could be a little bit more flexible now than they were in the 1950s, when the story seemed at the time fairly reasonable. Now, I'm noticing one other thing. People write of the story or simplify it and say, well, he promised her appliances. Yes and no. He promises that the appliances would simply stay in good repair. Now, it occurs to me, I guess that means there won't be any, washing machine repairman coming by to fix the washing machine, because it'll never break down, for the wish that Henry makes. So that could be a small source of marital stability there, but and having things just go well around the house, practical things, he's practical is what he's showing himself to be, and if she's practical too, that probably makes sense. So, I mean, is it great? No. You can see that the Boers make assumptions about things that, a mere 20 years later just patently do not hold. So, it's a little fluff story, a nothing story. It really doesn't even have a science fiction aspect to it as far as I can tell. Maybe fantasy, if you will, because it's got wish fulfillment. I guess I categorize it as that. But that's all. Properly, I categorize it as an Asimov rarity, because, as you can see, the story is not available. And if for any chance reason I should be obliged to re-record this video without the reading of the story, it just becomes that much more unavailable. And, he outgrew it, and he looked at that. The whole thing fits on a single piece of paper, page, within this whole magazine. So it really is very insubstantial. But people are curious. Oh, what is this rare story? Well, there it is. Okay, hoping that this will be allowed to stand. I thank you for listening.